saw on LinkedIn you have like tons of titles you had at Commodore.
Yes.
Like sales and marketing director, general manager, vice president, managing director.
Yes. Yeah.
So how should I introduce you?
Well, why don't I tell you my career with Commodore? We
Okay.
start with that. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think your listeners and readers will want to know, probably. Yeah. Actually, it's quite a funny story because I was living in Australia, and I decided I wanted to come back to the UK to try to get myself an international role. And when I left Australia, I spent about 11 weeks traveling all around the world looking at what was going to be the next thing. This was in 1983, yeah. And on my journeys, and believe me, I traveled all over the world, I discovered that, in my opinion, in 1983, that computing was going to be the next big thing, which is fairly obvious now, but it wasn't so obvious then. And when I got back to the UK, of course, we didn't have the internet. We only had newspapers. And I applied for some jobs, all of which I thought I could do, but were in one way or another related to computing. Anyway, I rang up an agency who had advertised a job, and I was talking to this guy, and it took me 40 minutes to persuade this guy to even give me an interview. Right? And he was in London, so I travelled into London, and I sat down, and we went through everything. But as I walked into the place, there was a woman walking out. So I sat down with this guy, and after about, it must have been 40 minutes, he said to me, "Well, Mr. Pleasance," he said, "I'm certain that this job that you've come in for, that you could do it easily, but I'm not going to put you forward for it." I said, "Oh, thanks a lot." And he said, "No," he said, "it's because," he said, "your background is mostly retail," and which was true. I'd been selling into retail virtually all my career. Initially, I was selling in intangibles. I was selling in credit and bank cards and stuff like that. And then I got into selling tangibles. I was with 3M Company, for example, and then with Pioneer Electronics and people like that. So he said to me, he said, "It would be wrong of me to put you in any position which didn't involve utilizing your retail skills." So I said, "Oh, fair enough." And I got up to leave, and he said, "Oh, sit down." He said, "Did you notice as you walked in there was a lady leaving?" And I said, "Yeah, I did actually." And he said, "Well," he said, "she's just given me a brief for a job." He said, literally, she just walked out, and I've not even had a chance to write it up yet. He said, "But it's a job that I think you would be absolutely perfect for."
Okay, great.
Right? And I said, "Okay, well, what's that?" And he said, "It's with Commodore." And I mean, I didn't even know the job existed. Nobody did. And what they wanted to do is they were looking to find somebody. They wanted to sell their business products. And in 1983, it was pets. They wanted to sell their business products into the retail market as opposed to businesses. And they didn't know, should they get a computer specialist who knew nothing about retail, or a retail specialist who knew nothing about computers. And he said, my recommendation was get a retail specialist, because anybody can learn about the product. So he said, I think it'd be absolutely perfect. So that's how I got my job at Commodore. It was absolutely a complete and utter fluke. Anyway, I had been with them 3 months, and what I was doing with them was, in order for me, first of all, I'd been out of the country. I'd been living in Australia for a long time, and I said to them, I need to examine the retail market in the UK just to see who was going to be the best to go with, sort of thing. So I did all my research, and then I came back and I said, right, I said, I have discovered there is a shop, a chain of shops, 54 shops. They're called Lasky's, and they have, not only do they sell consumer electronics, but I think in 33 of them they had store within a store called Micropoint, and they were actually selling computers within the retail stores. So I said, I reckon they're our best bet. So I said, what I'd like to do is I'd like to go round to all of the stores where they sell computers already, and talk to the staff and see, kind of suss it out. So I went to their head office and I got a letter from them saying that I could go in and talk to them. But of course, all I was really doing was pre-selling into them. I said, well, we've got products, and I pre-sold them so that when I went back to head office, I could say, right, well, I've been to all your stores and they all want to do it, so it was an easy sell. Anyway, I was visiting every single one, and I was in store number 30, and 31, and I had 2 stores left to visit. And I got a phone call in the store from the same girl who'd interviewed me, Eileen Stroud, her name was. And she said, oh, David, she said, do you remember when I interviewed you? I told you that, opportunities arise in Commodore from out of nowhere. And, it was an exciting company to work for. And I said, yeah, you did. She said, well, your star has just risen. She said, our consumer products, VIC-20s, and particularly now the 64, they're just going absolutely crazy. And they need somebody to sell into all the major retailers, and you're it. They've decided they want you to do it. So I joined the consumer division because of the demand for Commodore 64s. So I started off really with them in the consumer division. I was a national accounts manager looking after all the big stores, the Dixons and the Comets and the Currys and all of those stores, okay? After I'd been doing that for quite a while and I was very successful at it, and I introduced all the bundles to the company, I was ultimately made sales and marketing director of the company. And then what happened was that my boss at that time is a guy called Steve Franklin. He was quite a young guy, and he was very successful because of being successful with all the things that I was doing. And I ought to tell you about that too, actually. When Steve arrived into Commodore, the first thing he did was he sacked all of the business people. Every single one of them. No, that's not true. He kept one guy. He kept a guy, Peter Talbot, who was in charge of education, because Peter knew his education market. But Steve got rid of all the other business salespeople, and he didn't even talk to me for 2 weeks, not one word.
Wow. So
he got rid of all the other people, and he came, I think he was from Olivetti, somewhere like that. So he brought all his own business salespeople in with him. And then after 2 weeks, he walked in my office. He said, right, come in my office now. Sat down, and he said, right, he said, David, he said, if I knew anybody who understood your side of the business, you wouldn't be here now. And I said, oh, thanks very much. That's very kind of you. And he said, no, he said, I've got nothing against you. He said, I don't know you at all. He said, but I've been brought in here, and I've been told to change the whole company, top to bottom. And he said, and I intend to do that. He says, but he said, it seems to me like I'm stuck with you. He said, so if I am, he said, these are my rules. And then he reeled off a whole lot of rules about integrity and all these different things,
Okay.
And I said to him, yeah, well, that's okay with me. I live by those rules anyway, so it doesn't worry me.
Okay.
And then I said to him, I'll tell you what, Steve. I said, I'll make a deal with you. And he said, you're in no position to make a deal with me. I said, oh, hear me out. I said, I'll put a proposition to you that if you let me do it and I'm successful, I'll bring you more business than you've ever seen, or I'll really mess it up and you've got every reason to get rid of me. He said, all right, what do you want to do? I said, okay, said Steve, from now on, from this day forward, in the consumer products division, we do not sell computers, we sell dreams. And he said, what do you mean? I said, look at that computer over there. All it is a piece of plastic, looking at an Amiga 500 or a 64. I said, nobody knows what it can do or what it does. I said, I want to sell by putting packages together that show on the box exactly what this thing can do. And what we will have in it, we'll have the very latest games, because that's what kids want to buy, but we must also have productivity software, word processing, art packages, so that the parent can justify the spending of the money. Okay? So he said, yeah, well, that sounds like it's an okay idea. So that's when I put the Batman pack together. You must have heard about that. You heard about the Batman pack?
I mean, no,
No.
not really.
No.
No,
Okay. Well,
we didn't have that in Germany. But of course, I know the Batman game. Of course, I
yeah.
know
Well,
that.
let me tell you how that all came about. Right. I looked around and I could see for me that the product that was going to be the best product of the year was going to be eventually was going to be when it was produced the game that was about Batman the movie. So I went to see the publishers of it, and that's Ocean Software. Now they had just got back about a week back from Hollywood, where they had just paid out $1 million for the right to produce the game. Okay, so I went to see them, and I said, guys, I've got a proposition I want to put to you that you will either have the balls to go for, or you'll send for the men in the white coats to come and take me away. And they said, what is it? I said, right. I said, Batman the movie game. I said, I want to put that inside a package, which the package is going to feature Batman the game. The fact that there is also an Amiga 500 inside is incidental. Okay, so the whole package will be based around Batman the game. I said, I'm going to put some other software in there, there'll be 2 or 3 other games and a couple of productivity pieces. And I said, basically, this is what I want from you. I want you to give me the product exclusively in my pack for 2 months once it's finished, before you sell it as an individual product. And I said, the other thing I want to pay you very little for it, and I only want to commit to 10,000 pieces.
Okay.
So the first thing they said was, send for the men in the white coats to come and take me away.
Yeah, well, the thing is, but back then, what we didn't know is that sometimes movie productions from Oceans were crap, and sometimes the game were successful. Not all Oceans games were good games.
No, but this was we all took a risk, all right?
Okay.
But the thing was that they paid $1 million for the license, and they said it was going to cost them $1 million to make the game. But anyway, eventually they said, look, we have 2 concerns. They said, one, we're concerned that our dealers will be pissed off by letting you have it on its own. And they said the second thing we're concerned about is the volume. We've got to sell a certain volume we've calculated out, and we're afraid that this will affect our volumes, because we're spending all this much money, we've got to get this volume. And I said to them, okay, I said, look, first of all, yes, the dealers will be pissed off, but not for very long, because when they start selling packs at £400 instead of games at £40, I know what they'd prefer to sell. Okay.
The package, yeah.
Yeah, of course. And I said, the other thing is, I said, because I'm putting a lot of money advertising this, I reckon you're going to be selling a lot of games. Anyway, they had the balls and they went for it, which was amazing, really. So the net result was, yes, the dealers were pissed off for about 2 days, and then they started to really understand that they were making lots more money. And in the end, Ocean, they sold 5 times more than they'd estimated they were going to sell.
Yeah.
And the thing was that I didn't take 10,000 pieces from them. I took 186,000 pieces from them, because that's how many Amiga Batman packs we sold in 12 weeks at Christmas.
Was that just the Amiga version, or was that also packed with the C64 version?
No, it was only Amiga.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Now we did lots of packs with the 64, but that was not one of them.
Ah, okay.
And anyway, the net result of that is that we just kept selling and selling and selling and selling, and it launched the Amiga as a big time product. But we also did other things. For example, one of the things we did was that, because I always believed very strongly in the small independent dealers, as opposed to the Dixons and the big stores. So I always wanted to give them some kind of special deal, and we never sold to them directly because we couldn't handle hundreds of small accounts. So we had 5 distributors, and we sold our distributors volume, and then they sold to all the individual accounts. So what I did was I put a pack together, a promotion with our distributors, which they offered to their dealers. And the first one we did was with a company called Lightning Distribution. And what we did is we gave every Amiga product and 64, we gave them all some points. value. And we said, right, for every 64 you sell, you get 20 points, or whatever it was. For every Amiga, you get 100 points. And if you reach a certain volume of points, then we will take you on a really, really special holiday, right?
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the first one we ever did, I mean, obviously, Amiga is Spanish for female friend, girlfriend. And but we didn't want to take them to Spain because everybody went to Spain. So we took them to Mexico City and then Acapulco, right? All on one trip. 7 days, and they had absolute luxury, everything we could lay on for them. The net result of that was that all of these dealers, I think we took 35 or 36 dealers on the first trip. And when they came back, they told the rest of the world what a fantastic trip it was. So the next trip we put on, everybody was trying to get on these trips. And we did different trips every 2 trips a year, right? And that was how we beat the ST, the Atari ST, because none of the dealers would sell the ST. As soon as somebody walked in and said, I want an ST, so no, you don't, you want an Amiga.
That's really
And
very tricky. Yeah, that's really very
yeah,
nice. Actually, I just checked. The Batman was released 89.
that's
So,
right. Yeah,
okay.
that's right. Yeah. And in fact, the problem we had after Batman was, we had to keep coming up with new packs because the dealers wanted 2 different packs every year, one at Christmas time and one in the summertime. And so we put some fantastic packs together, plus all these different trips that we did. And the net result is that we just built a massive business. And anyway, that's how I was then promoted to sales and marketing director because of all that work that I did. And then what happened was that I then reached the conclusion that Steve Franklin was in a very good position. He was a young guy, and he was very successful because of all the work that I did. And we got on really well together. It was excellent. But I realized that he probably wasn't going to be going anywhere. So if I wanted to promote promotion, I need to do something else. So the job became vacant for general manager of Commodore International, which is actually the holding company, or was the holding company for Commodore. And that was based in Switzerland, in Basel. And the responsibility was looking after all of the countries, 37 countries, where Commodore did not have an operating office. And I applied for and got that job. And I was there for 2 years. And it was absolutely fantastic. Because I'm a hunter. That's what I do. I hunt. I love new territories. Just give me a ticket and send me on my way, and I'll come back with business. That's what I do. Anyway, what happened, just for the record, is that I think I'd only been in Switzerland 2 or 3 weeks, and I got summoned to New York by Mehdi Ali, and he sat me in front of his desk and he said, right, what do you know about XYZ servicing company? I can't remember the name, but anyway, because it's 20 years ago. And I said, nothing. I said, are they the company that we've just appointed to do all of our warranty repair work? He said, yes. What do you know about them? I said, absolutely nothing. And I didn't. I swear to God I didn't. And then he said, well, what do you know about this company that does all the hospitality that you guys put on? We used to take our customers our top customers, we'd take them to Wimbledon finals. We'd take them to the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe in Paris and things like this, Derby Day in the UK. We put all the hospitality on, but we was coming away with a swag load of orders because that's what you did, And anyway, I said, not very much. Anyway, what turned out was that Steve Franklin had actually had a financial involvement in lots of these companies that we were using, including this brand new servicing company. He had a financial interest in them, which of course is against the law. You can't do that, Okay. Now, luckily for me, I did not have anything to do with it. I didn't even know. And Mehdi believed me, and he had to, because it was true. Anyway, the net result is that they fired Steve Franklin. They got rid of him.
Okay.
So then Mehdi said to me, I want you to take on the job. I want you to be MD. And I said, I don't want it. And he said, are you crazy? And I said, no, Mehdi, I don't want it. I said, I'm a hunter, not a farmer. The job you just given me, looking after all these new countries, is just perfect for me. I love it. So anyway, cut a long story short, I suggested he might want to talk to Kelly Sumner, who was my my second in charge and been working for me for a long time. So he eventually appointed him. And anyway, I was with Commodore International for 2 years in Switzerland, and then I'd been asking him to let me loose in America. So he sent me to America, and I was vice president of the sales company out there, and I started them selling again because they hadn't been selling into consumer for 3 or 4 years. Terrible. So I sorted all that out. But eventually he made me come back to the UK and forced me to take over as MD in the UK because Commodore International was in trouble. The UK was our strongest business by a long way, and I'd built it, so he wanted me to run it. So that's how come I had all these different positions. You know?
That's interesting. So the interesting thing here is that I figure is you also at 3M like Petro Tyschtschenko, who also told me that he also had a position at 3M. That's quite interesting. And also what I would like to know is, because I spoke to other Commodorians before, and many of them said computer were their hobby, and that is why they wanted to start in the company, because they made computer studies, or it was their hobby. How did you start into the computer business? Was it also your hobby, or was it really
No,
just
no,
it's a
absolutely not. No,
next
absolutely
big
not.
thing? Okay.
In fact, I'm almost ashamed to admit it, but you know, I estimated, and this is only an estimate, okay, like a back of the envelope job. I've estimated that in the 12 years I was with Commodore, I personally have sold somewhere between 2 and 2.25 million computers, okay, and most of the time I didn't even know how to switch one on.
Oh, seriously? Okay.
Seriously, yeah. I hate to admit it, but I have to be honest. When it comes to selling, you don't have to be technical, and sometimes it's better to not be technical. People don't want to know how something does it. They just know, what does it do? What's it going to do for me? Right? And if you can show them, that's why I put all the packs together. Show people what it does. Who cares it's a bit of plastic and, you know, obviously all the fanatics do, and that's great. But my idea was, if I can get them into the home at the lowest possible cost, like the 500, and then they gradually they'll get bigger and bigger. They'll get a 1200 or a 2000 or a 4000 or whatever they end up, because they're into it. Then I've done my job, and that's how I just wanted to get as many in the homes as possible. And of course, the other result is that if you've got thousands and thousands of home computers being sold, the software companies will write for it. They need to have a base to write to. So yeah, so in answer to your question, no, I've never been a technophobia or anything like that. It's not a hobby. I'd already researched, and I realized that the computer industry was going to be big, and I wanted to be in an industry that was going to be big.
Okay, that was the reason why. It's also interesting because you are quoted in Wikipedia as one of the few Commodorians that actually said that the Amiga 600 is total crap.
I did. Now, do you know the story behind it all?
I've read Mr. Bender's book, you know, who was a support technician for Amiga, and he said that there was something like a possibility in Germany to exchange your Amiga 500 with the Amiga 600, which is actually worse than the 500.
Yeah, no,
That is something I read in his book.
I'll tell you the story, because that's not true. I'll tell you the truth.
Okay, tell me the true story.
Okay. Now, in the UK, because of all the packs and the bundles that we put together, we had managed to keep selling the 64 in volume for 2 years, well beyond its really sell-by date. You know, it should never have kept selling, but we kept putting it in such a great package that we sold it and sold it and sold it by the thousands. So I went to Mehdi Ali one day and I said, Mehdi, we've kept the 64 going for 2 years longer than it should, but any moment now it is going to die, and it's going to die big time. I said, what I want you to produce for us is a replacement Amiga, the very lowest cost possible, at the same sort of price as a 64, say £200. We may get away a little bit more, but something really cost reduced cheap that people can buy to get them into the Amiga market. And then if they want to, they can add hard drives and they can add, all the bits and pieces and get what they want, but they can grow up into it. But we need to start them off at a £200 price point. So that was the idea. And the idea was we would produce a 300, which immediately tells you the number 300 is less than 500, right? So the idea was we stripped it down, a smaller keyboard, no numeric keypad because you didn't need it, and we reduced it down so we could come in with a really, really cheap Amiga product. We had a meeting in Germany. What used to happen is that Mehdi would hold most of his meetings either in my office in London or in the Frankfurt office, okay? So this particular time we were in Frankfurt. And he said, right, now we're just going to finalize what we're going to do with the 300. Anyway, it was all agreed. We left home, went back home. And then about 2 months later, we got a delivery of 600s, A600s. And the A600, because without us knowing, the Germans had said to Mehdi, we will not sell anything that hasn't got a hard drive in it. We won't sell it. So instead of producing the 300 at a lower cost, they produced the bloody 600, which cost more to make than the 500, even though it was a lesser specification than the 500. They called it 600, and the first thing the 600 did was to kill all the sales of the 500.
Ooh,
right?
Okay. Because
Now,
people thought they bought something better, actually.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you looked in all the first several thousand Amiga 600s that came in, on the motherboard it says A300.
Oh, okay.
So the Germans, and I'm sorry, I don't mean this like offensively,
No
but
problem.
because of what the Germans requested, we killed massive sales of the 500. And then when people got the 600, most people were not very happy, because and then of course what made it even worse was that the reaction that Commodore had, the typical head office who know nothing about anything, they bring out the A500 Plus, which just made it even worse. Can you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure.
So that is the truth with the 600. It should have been the Amiga 300. It was designed to replace a 64 in a price point so that we could get more and more and more machines into the marketplace. Mm-hmm. And it was killed. So that's the truth behind it.
I wonder, do you know anything about the C64 GS, the game console that was a massive flop? Because it was basically a C64 but without a keyboard, and it sold pretty badly.
Yeah, we didn't want it. We didn't want it. See, you got to understand one thing, okay? I mean, I think I'm well positioned to make this comment.
Sure.
I mean, I was with Commodore for 12 years. And the reason why Commodore failed, and it was always going to fail, was because it never, ever had a plan. Never, ever. It used to stumble from one crisis to the next with making the most ridiculous decisions that anybody in their right mind would never have made, and then wondering why things weren't working too well. So, the products like the GS and products like the C65, do you remember that?
Sure. As you probably heard on the Amiga 30 anniversary and Noise, they're actually building up an Amiga C65 to replace the C65, to make a clone of it. You probably saw that on the.
No, I didn't see it. I was there, of course, but I didn't see it. No. But that's the truth, and it's no wonder that Commodore failed. I mean, the decisions they made were absolutely ridiculous from time after time after time. Products like the Plus 4, my God, how ridiculous was that product? The 128, come on, it cost as much to make a 128, almost as much as it cost to make an Amiga 500. Why would you bother?
Well, the worst thing about the GS actually is that it came with a special cartridge package with Flimbo's Quest and Robocop 3, and you had to press the J key to start Robocop 3. but it didn't have a keyboard. So you couldn't even play the game, and it would say on the cartridge, it would say for C64 GS, and I actually have one, and I have the cartridge, so I can actually say it's true. They shipped a cartridge with it that required you to press a key to play the game.
But we just didn't. We just refused to stock it. We knew it wouldn't sell, and we said, why should we fill our warehouse with something that nobody's going to buy, and then it will be an inventory dilemma. And the one thing you need to understand is that the UK, we were always profitable. Always profitable. The business that we built was very, very solid. It was honest and true business. And we can stand testimony to that because we were the last subsidiary to file for bankruptcy 18 months after Commodore International filed for bankruptcy, and long after all the other companies went, including Germany, including Italy, including France. They all went quite quickly. We kept trading. And let me tell you this, that when we closed our books in Commodore Business Machines UK Limited, we were sitting on a £6 million worth of tax credits. Now that meant that we could have probably made 30–40 million pounds of profit before we had to pay tax, because we had been so efficient. So, you know, we managed our business. We said, why do we want to take the games machine? It's not going to sell. We're not going to take it. I don't know who invented it, who wanted it. It came from somebody's wet dream. I don't know. But, you know, why make something that nobody's asked for?
I have read on Wikipedia that it was supposed to be competition to the NES from Nintendo.
Yeah, but who asked for it? The public didn't want it.
Yeah, it's interesting. So let me ask you this. Actually, were you aware of what was happening beside that? I mean, for example, here in Germany, actually last week I bought an Oceanic clone drive. You know,
Right.
there were quite some competition that were cloning the Commodore the Commodore drives, the 1541, for example.
Right.
How did you do about that? Did you sue those companies, or did you say they don't bother me? Or I mean
Yeah.
I saw there were tons of companies copying the drives, for example.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it never really bothered us because our business was successful, and we were selling a good ratio of hard drives and all the add-ons of our own products. We were selling a good ratio of them. It never bothered us. At the end of the day, Commodore was very remiss right from the beginning in not protecting its own trademarks. And let me give you a perfectly good example. In the UK, there were 13 independently published magazines, all dedicated exclusively to the Amiga, and they had a massive, massive circulation. They had a monthly audited circulation. Remember, this is audited by professional people. Their monthly audited circulation was about 630,000 magazines a month, which they reckon are read by 2.2 people per household. That's 1.2 plus million people reading a magazine dedicated to the Amiga every single month, and they never paid a penny royalty for the name.
Oh, okay.
Now that's outrageous.
So you knew that there are companies taking apart your hardware and making clones. You were aware of that. You knew that
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
salesperson.
Yeah, we passed the information on to, but Commodore never even had anybody to deal with it.
Okay.
They had one lawyer. I knew her, Gail Hanworth, her name was,
Okay.
and she was one lawyer in the whole of the company, and she can be bothered with stuff like that. You must be joking. They were fighting too many other things to worry about things like that, you know. And to be honest with you, it was small fry. It really was small fry, you know.
Okay. So I mean, of course, nowadays those clone drives are rare, but they earn quite a good money on eBay if you catch one of them. So now let me ask you, because you mentioned earlier that you also took care about the companies that didn't have an official Commodore market, and
Yep.
I had an interview with a long time user from the early 80s from Turkey, and he said in Turkey the problem was you had all the hardware officially distributed by Commodore Turkey, but no software. Not a single publisher or company that would do software. So there was a big piracy going on because you couldn't actually buy the software in a package originally as you could in other countries. And I wonder why Commodore never took care about Turkey or maybe other countries, why they
Well,
would allow a black market piracy.
yeah, but hang on. First of all, that has never been Commodore's responsibility. Software has not been our responsibility. Having said that, I can put this on record. I was the first person in the whole of the computer hardware business. I signed up Commodore UK in FAST. Do you know what FAST is? The
No.
Federation Against Software Theft. Right? I signed it. We paid an annual license to them to support, right, to stop piracy.
Okay.
So I can hand on heart say we did what we had to do, but it was never our responsibility to look after software companies and their products. Okay, so I sold into Turkey. I had one distributor in Turkey, a company called Teletechnik, they were called, and I used to sell to them, and I used to protect them. And can I tell you who the worst people were who screwed my official Commodore distributor in Turkey was? Shall I tell you who it was?
Sure.
Commodore Germany.
Oh, okay.
Right, and I'll tell you exactly what happened. Okay, I used to sell to my distributor in every country at the lowest possible price we could, because they, when they got it, they had to warrant it, service it, market it, and do everything all on their own, because we didn't have an office. That's why they were our export business. So I would sell to Teletechnik, and then what happened was they would sell, and then if something went wrong, they would look after it. They would would warrant it and repair it and all the rest of it. But what happened was that at the end of a certain quarter, every now and again, Commodore Germany would dump a whole load of product into the black market in Turkey, because it's just driving across the border, right? And all of this black market product would turn up that my distributor would have to warrant it without having been paid for it, right?
Okay.
So the first time that happened, I went from Switzerland. I took 3 people with me, and we went through every single one of my customers' stock, and we recorded every single serial number, and then gave it to them and said, right, if something comes into you that's not one of these serial numbers, you didn't sell it, so you don't have to warrant it.
Wow.
But can you see how that would screw up a market? And all that was because Germany was short of its figures and wanted to make up the figures for the quarter end.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Dump it.
Yeah. You
Terrible.
already told me when we were talking last week on Facebook that some of your answers may not be to the liking of others. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
But I swear to you, on my children's lives, I'm not telling you anything that isn't true. And why would I? I've got no reason to, you know.
It's
I mean,
interesting, yeah, because I spoke to those people before, and they told me they have no idea why that was, and you seem to know everything behind it, so it's perfect that I have the chance now to ask you all my questions that I ever had.
well, did you know about the shenanigans that Commodore Holland got up to every
No,
quarter?
no.
Now it's very sad, because the guy in question, Bernard Van Tienen, is no longer with us. He passed away a few years ago. But he used to boast to us. He used to brag about it. Every quarter end, without exception, if he was short of his figures, that he'd forecast the sales he was going to make. He would write some invoices, and he would put product on a truck and send it on the last day of the month, send it off and go driving for a week. And then a week later, come back in and put it in, back into stock. Never made the sale, but recorded it as a sale.
Oh,
So he could get his figures. He did it every quarter, and he used to brag about it.
Oh,
Now
okay.
that's outrageous. You see, that's another reason why Commodore didn't survive. They never audited anything. They didn't, you know, most companies, you have a private auditing company that will drop in on you without announcing. They go through all your books to make sure everything's right. Commodore never did. Never. So it was in the hands of people. If they wanted to be a crook, they could be a crook. You know? And that's outrageous. I mean, you know, and you must have heard about Mr. Van Tienen's personal expenses. You not heard the story?
Not so far, no.
Okay, well, I'll tell you this one then. And I said, I'm sorry that this is in his absence because he can't defend himself. But, you know, I shared my MD-ship in Commodore UK with Colin Proudfoot. Colin is a financial guy, and that's not my bag. I'm you know, I can read a balance sheet and all that stuff, but I'm a sales and marketing, you know. So I got Colin to join me as joint MD. And we had to have a meeting with the Dutch liquidator because there were certain copyrights and things that were partly theirs and partly ours. So we had to go and have a meeting with the Dutch liquidator. And when we were with him, he said, "Oh, by the way," he said, "what do you know about this place in Amsterdam called Yabium? Have you heard of that?"
No.
Right. Well, Yabium is the most famous brothel in Amsterdam, and probably one of the most famous in the world.
Ooh,
right?
Okay.
Right, and the Dutch liquidator sat there, and Bernard was alive at this time. He sat there and he said, "I've got expenses from Mr. Van Tienen for the last 12 months for Yabium to the value of $250,000."
Whoa. Okay.
And he put that on Commodore expenses.
That's incredible. That's
And it's
incredible.
the truth, mate. It's absolutely true. So
Wow.
what do you think of that?
Well, I think it's totally amazing. I didn't know that Commodore would do nothing to protect their interest and that they would allow people to do such crazy stuff. It's incredible. It's
No plan,
really.
my friend. You know, there's an old saying, no man plans to fail, he merely fails to plan.
Hmm.
And that's Commodore in a nutshell. They never planned anything. Never.
How about those countries where you had where you had a strong black market, like we had once an article from somebody from Argentina, and they had Trine, so like Dream but with an N at the end, a Trine Z64, and you can see on the internet pictures like really a copy, a clone of the Commodore 64, just some Spanish keycaps on the machine. So I wonder, were you aware that Argentina, for example, had black market, a clone of their own? That because Commodore didn't well go into that market, though they made their own market.
Yeah, we had no business at all in South America. None at all. And to be honest with you, because Commodore wouldn't spend the money, wouldn't invest the money, I don't think we expected that we ever would. So what went on there with the people copying it? It's the same as I don't know if you've known the full story. Well, you were at Noise, weren't you?
Yes, sure. I was there. Yes.
But
Yeah.
you heard the story about how Colin and I got cheated out of buying the worldwide business, and that was because of a Chinese company. Did you not hear that story?
I heard parts of it, but not your whole
Okay.
speech.
Okay. Well, let me tell you this, and then the reason why we did not, in the end, we were not able to make a bid for the worldwide assets of Commodore, which we had planned to do, we estimated that it would cost us. We needed $50 million, and the reason why. I mean, everybody said, "Oh, you can buy the assets. Going to be 15 million," and we said, "Yeah, that's true." However, nobody except us took into account that you would need to finance the business for 6 or 7 months with your own funds, because nobody would give you credit terms. If because they'd all been burnt, they'd all been left with massive debts by Commodore. So anybody who's making the keyboards, who's making the cases, who's making the motherboards, they wouldn't sell to you on credit terms because they're already hurt. You would have to pay cash. So we did all of our sums, and believe you me, we did a really good job. And we knew that we needed $50 million in order to make it work. And we were convinced that if we could do that, we would be a successful business. Anyway, what happened was that we formed a consortium of investors. We had small, high wealth individuals who came in and with 5 million, 6 million, what have you, and between them they raised 25 million. And then we had a Chinese manufacturing company who were called New Star Electronics. They came to us and they said, "We want to be part of this." They said, because what they'd been doing, and that's the reason I'm having this conversation, up until that time, they had been manufacturing without license, without any fees. They'd been manufacturing Sega and Nintendo games machines and selling into the Chinese market, not paying royalties to anybody. But they wanted to get legitimate. So that by coming in with us, they would have been our manufacturer, and they would have been, a very large shareholder of our business, which would have made perfectly good sense. So they were coming in with 25 million, okay? So we had 50 million. But 2 days before the auction, they pulled out.
Okay.
We knew why, and we've subsequently had it confirmed. But they were got at by Eskom. Eskom got to them and said, "You don't need to put up 25 million. Let us come away from them. Let us buy it, and we'll give it to you for free." Right?
Oh, okay.
They never had any intention of bloody well making Amigas, which is a stupid thing. But that's what happened. So we were cheated out of it. But the point I'm trying to make is that there's this Chinese manufacturing company who for many years have been making, under the Sega and Nintendo names, those games machines and selling them in millions and not paying anything royalty. So, the point is this, is that if you're not in a market, we weren't in China. So if somebody had been doing our products over there, what would we have done about it? We weren't selling in there anyway. I mean, if we'd run the business, we would get ourselves a legitimate business in those countries. I'd love to go to South America and sell. I speak reasonable Spanish, and I would be there in a heartbeat. But whatever happened in Argentina or anywhere else in South America, we didn't worry about it. Honestly, what's the point? I'd have been grey 25 years ago. Everyone worrying about that.
Yeah, I see. It's just interesting because you can see that people in Argentina were really interested in the Commodore. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a black market that even has clones of the Commodore 64. That's just my thinking. So, as a company, we would think if there is a company making a big amount of clones of our product, then we should go there and make our own market.
Yeah, I totally agree. 100% agree.
And I mean, on the other hand, you have been in Spain, if I'm not mistaken. There was Commodore 64 in Spain. So.
Yeah, but we had Commodore Spain as a subsidiary. We had an officer in Madrid, and that was a very, very good guy, superb guy called Santiago de Gracia. He was the general manager, a good friend of mine. In fact, his son and his daughter both came and spent a year or two each working for me in the UK so they could improve their English and get better. Really very good guy. Very good guy. A good Commodore businessman. Yep.
So I was just making the point, so as you already were in Spain, it would have been easy to go to Argentina because it's the same language, kind of.
Yeah, well, similar. It's quite similar language. Not quite the same, but yeah.
A different Spanish accent, I guess.
Well, it's it is different. It's not Catalan. It's Latin. Latin. I was married to a Dominican girl who speaks Spanish. I was married for 10 years, and she thought I couldn't speak a word of Spanish until her and I both went to Madrid, and she didn't understand a word they were saying. So there you go.
I see, I see, I
Yeah,
see, I
so
see.
different, you know. Yeah.
Ah, okay. So we spoke a lot about Amiga packaging. What did you do for the Commodore? Also, I wonder why you say you started selling the PET in 82, because 82 was the year
83.
8, yeah,
83.
even 83. Isn't that the time where the PET was over already?
Well, no, what happened was that when they recruited me, their idea was to increase their sales of the pet and therefore put it into the retail market. But in fact, before I could even have done that, they realized that there wasn't going to be enough product. And also, they were started to develop, I think, 286 machines, if I remember rightly. But I mean, that's another farce. That's another complete and utter farce. Why in God's name would Commodore make its own PCs? Why? When in Taiwan and Korea, they're making them for a fraction of the price, and it's good quality product. We should have just bought them in and given them a design, bought them in with our badge on, and then sold them, so that they have the manufacturing, they have all of those costs involved in that. But we never did. And you know, when I worked in the US, which was 92, January 92, I worked in the US for just under a year. I went into the offices in Westchester. I went up to see all of our engineers, and I think we had 7 engineers working on Amiga, and we had 40 engineers working on PCs.
Ooh, okay.
Now, do you know the reason for that? This is another example of Mehdi Ali's total incompetence, right? Mehdi used to appoint people to do a job, and because Mehdi didn't know anything about it, he just assumed that they would do the right thing, and he appointed this guy called Bill Sidness, who came, I think he was from IBM actually, and he came into the company, and the first thing he did was to give jobs to 40 of his mates. Why would you need 40 engineers for a PC? Can you think of a reason?
No, no, it's interesting. It's interesting to hear all that because I only know the views of others and of this book, The Rise and Fall of Commodore, that was released 10 years ago by Brian Becknell. So that is
Yeah, well, I know Brian. I've just had an interview with him for his new book, The Amiga Years.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's totally interesting. It's totally
Yeah,
interesting.
and another example of Mehdi Ali's incompetence in recruiting, he recruited a new head of manufacturing, and the head of manufacturing said to him, "Right, we need to close down some factories and open a new one." Oh yeah, why? Well, Philippines. Let's go to the Philippines. Cheap labor and blah de la de la de la. So we closed Hong Kong. They announced they were going to close Hong Kong. On the Monday morning after they announced closing Hong Kong, nobody turned up for work because they all started looking for other jobs, right? So we had nobody manufacturing, and then eventually they opened a plant in the Philippines. Now, you answer me this question. If you are a company that manufactures goods and you do not have any clients, no customers, no business whatsoever in the Far East, why would you open a manufacturing plant in the Far East when it takes up to 7 weeks by boat to get to your market in Europe? Why would you?
I don't know. Maybe it's so cheap that it's making up for the long delay.
No, and of course you must remember something, all right? This industry, the consumer electronics, particularly computer industry, it's the only industry in the world that eats its own young. Like Intel. Intel used to release a new chip, they'd launch it, and before it had been sold for very long, there's another one, more powerful, less money, or the same money. They kept doing it again and again and again. And it's like fruit. If you buy fruit and you hold on to it for more than a day too long, it's gone rotten. But you're talking about pennies. Here we're talking about hundreds of dollars. So you need what they call just-in-time manufacturing. So you place an order and it arrives just in time for the market, so that you're not sitting on inventory. And you cannot do that if your main manufacturing is 6 or 7 weeks by boat away. We found out why he chose to build something in the Philippines. He used to work for a company based in the Philippines, and the guy had a mistress there that suited him to have a bloody factory there because he had a mistress there. And we spent all that money and all of that, and nobody checked it out.
Okay.
What do you think of that?
That's crazy. That's crazy. Um, um, it's interesting because I heard some people saying that actually Commodore shouldn't have stopped the PC market, and you say the total opposite.
No, I didn't. No,
Yeah?
we should be in it, but we shouldn't make them.
Ah, you mean you should have bought them
We
in
should
from
just
third party?
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. All we do is to say this is a design of the fascia, and this is our logo, and we should have 1 or 2 people in quality control to make sure that anything with our name on it was okay. But then we sell it. But we don't invest in the manufacturing of it or anything like that. We say we want 1,000 for next month at by this date, and you pay them, and then and you really got them sold. That's what we should have done. Don't you agree?
Sure, sure. I mean, that is what you do nowadays.
But
Anyway,
we
so
but we should have done it then.
yeah, I know. No. But I wonder if you said that Commodore was still profitable. Profitable. I wonder why did you actually had to close? Was the pressure so big from the bankruptcy of the USA that you had to close it?
Well, no. Where would we get our product from?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we what happened was that when Commodore International declared bankruptcy, they all the smaller subsidiaries started to go one very quickly after another because they weren't solid. Commodore had been losing money for years and years, right? But what we did is that because we had a thriving business, we would buy all the stock from any of the ones that went subsidiaries, that we'd just buy all their stock, which helped the liquidators of those companies because we just took the stock straight away, gave them cash for it. And so we bought stock from every single company as they went under, and kept us going for that length of time. But eventually we had no product.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember as a teenager at 95, my grandfather still bought some C64 for 100 German marks in the supermarket. So I
Yeah.
guess they did a similar to you. They bought out what was left from the companies that went bankrupt. So
Yes.
they could sell it for 100 to the supermarket as a game machine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you just reminded me, that is why, did you ever understand why Commodore, even though they're actually a Bahamian company, registered in the Bahamas, they were listed on Wall Street Stock Exchange. Did you ever understand why we did so little business in America? Do you know the reason?
No, no, not
D-
really.
Didn't you ever wonder?
Well, that I was speaking to Dave Haney and Bill Hurt, and they all told me that it was none of their business.
Well,
Um,
true, that's true, because they were designers, engineers.
they were telling me they were telling me that there were so many manager changes, and there were constantly fired managers and replaced them, and due to replacing so many people, there was nobody that actually could, well, get the sales up, because by the time he corrected things, he was fired already. That is what I
Well,
heard.
no, I mean, it's true that Medi kept firing people, but not salespeople.
Managers.
Um, no, yeah, just department managers like engineering and manufacturing and people like that. And he was terrible at hiring. He always hired the wrong people. No, I'll tell you the truth about the US, and I know this firsthand. So everything I'm telling you, I swear to you on my life, is the truth, right?
Of
I've got no
course.
reason to tell you any lies. Why would I? Um, the reason is that when the 64 started to really take off all over the world, right? Um, what happened is that in America they had a lot of small dealers and they had a few bigger companies that used to buy in volume. And then one day, Kmart, you know, one of the biggest chains in America, decided they were going to use the Commodore 64 as a lost leader line. What that means is they were buying it for $98 and they were selling it for $99, right? And the reason they wanted to do that was it got people into their stores in volumes, and those people would buy their cassette drives, the software, joysticks, and everything else, right? That's why they did it. Now,
A bit like Toys R Us? Maybe?
exactly like
Okay.
Toys R Us. Exactly like Toys R Us. Now, normally, you would stop that. You would not allow that to happen. You'd go to them and you'd say, look, you can't do that, because everybody else needs to make a living out of this. You're stealing all their margin. And if they said, no, we're going to do it, you'd say, well, suddenly we haven't got any stock. I'm really sorry, we're short of stock. And you don't sell to them. You sell to everybody else. But Commodore in America, Commodore Inc., they said, oh, why should we give a fuck? We'll just sell to because they're going to take everything we can get. And so they let them take it. And immediately, every single other dealer stopped selling. Why would you? You're not going to buy it and sell it and make $1. It doesn't make any sense at all. So they lost that retail market. Okay. So then, when they brought out the Amiga products, they got back into some of the dealers, not any of the big guys, who they couldn't sell to save their life. But the market they had was very small. Now, they then stopped selling virtually to all the big guys. There was hardly any sales going on. And Mehdi asked me to go to America, and that's when I went in January of '92 to try and sort out the mess. And when I got there, I had a team of people, salespeople, that worked for me, very good guys and girls. And I sat them in a room and I said, right, I want to know the truth. What's going on? And they said to me, well, David, the problem is we can't sell to any of our customers, and that includes all the big ones, Sears and Tandy, and all. We can't sell to them. And I said, why? And they said, because they owe us money and they won't pay their bills. So we're not allowed to sell. So I said, why do they owe you money? We don't know. I said, okay. I said, and I gave them all a list. I said, right, you guys, each of you make appointments with all these people, and I will come with you and we'll sort it out, find out what's going on, okay?
Okay, now comes the interesting part. So what
Yeah,
happened?
yeah. Well, the first one I went to was Sears. You know, Sears, they've got a massive of stores all over America, and they've got a big Sears Towers. I don't know, it's 30 stories or something, 40 stories. And I was up there. It was my first meeting ever in America, and I think we're up on about the 16th floor, and there's a boardroom table with about 20 people all sat around it. And I go in there with my rep, Steve Salas, his name was. Sat down, introduced myself, and I said, fine. I said, all right. I said, gentlemen, I'm here from the UK because I've been asked to come in and try and, get everybody's business going really, really well. And I said, so I said, what you'll get from me is complete and utter honesty, nothing else, and I expect the same from you. And they said, fine, no problem with that. So I said, okay, I have to start with probably an awkward question. I said, but would you mind telling me, because I don't know the answer, why it is you're not paying your bills? And Sears said, well, because we're waiting for you to come and take all our stock back. And I said, take all your stock back? I said, I've been with Commodore, I think it was 9 years by then. And I said, I've never known Commodore to be a lending library. And they just pushed this letter across the desk to me, across the boardroom table. And it was a letter signed by Jim Dion, who was the president of Commodore Inc., the sales company. And he had sold them CD TVs by the bucket load on a sale or return basis with his signature on the bottom.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Now, nobody could sell CD TVs, let alone Sears. Sears can't sell anything. Sears can ring up the money and put something in a bag, but they can't sell anything, as well as I do. They're just incompetent. They're not like the little dealers who understand their market and everything. They're just salespeople. So they sat on all this technology, which was far too ahead of its time. Nobody knew what to do with it. You know, nobody had anything to do with it because it was just too. It was a fabulous product, but not for then. So they sat there with I don't know $350,000 worth of CD-TVs that I've got to take back because there's a letter by the president of the company. And it's not Mehdi Ali, he was the president of the corporation. So anyway, so what I said to these guys, I said, okay, gentlemen, I said, well, I told you at the beginning that, you know, I'm a man of honor, and as a company we're honorable. And I said, I will arrange to get that stuff uplifted and give you a credit note for it. And then I said, can I ask a favor? What's that? And I said, well, I'll be frank with you. I said, the product that you've got, CD-TV, it's a dog's breakfast. It's not a product that I would expect you to be able to sell, or anybody else for that matter, and I have to acknowledge that. I said, but the problem is, you've got it, and you've got nothing that we do sell. I said, in Europe we are selling Amiga 500s by the bucket load. We are selling them millions every year. And because it's a bloody good product, it's a product that I think you really can sell. And I said, okay. And I said, would you guys do me a favor? Would you give me an order for a new product, 500s, and in fact, I have a pack designed specially for you. That's your exclusive pack, and you sell that to the same value of the product I'm taking away. So at least you're trading again, and at least I can offset my credit, which has nothing to do with me anyway. I can at least say, right, well, we have to take this all back, but I've got an order for stock that will sell, and they agreed to it. And that happened all over America. Every single company, they'd all been done the same. They'd all been stitched up by Jim Dion, and he refused to take it back because it would have exposed what he'd done, which we'd never supposed. It's not a sale if it's a bloody sale or return.
Yeah, sure.
What he'd done is he'd claimed it as a sale, claimed all the commission, put it in his pocket, but then didn't want to take it back because it would have exposed what he'd done. So there's your example. That's for the two reasons why the America was a terrible market. Now, just to finish that story, I got into every store. I got 500s. Took back their CD-TVs. Not my problem. Hated to do it, but I had no option. But they all started to trade with the 500s. So then I went to Mehdi and I said, right, Mehdi, my job's done here in America. He said, what are you talking about? And I said, Mehdi, you and I both know that we've got the 1200 coming in a few months' time. I said, I do not want to keep on selling to these guys 500s, stop them to the gunnels, then we bring the 1200 out and the 500 is going to die and I'll have the same bloody problem again. So I want to let them sell out before, just, you know. So I went back and did the international business for a while, only for a couple of months. But that's my reasoning. Can you understand that? If I'd have filled them all up with 500s, launched the 1200, and they'd say, even though it wasn't on a sale or return, they would say, we want, get rid of the 500s, we want the 1200.
Sure, of course.
But,
you want also,
Mehdi was too stupid to see that, but eventually he understood it, right? So he let me go. But that's me. That's what I do. You always think about tomorrow. You know, I want business today, tomorrow, and beyond.
It's interesting. Because originally I planned to talk with you about the UK market, and now we are talking about other markets that you know all the answers for the question that I had talking to other people that didn't know how to answer my questions sometimes. So that's quite interesting.
Well, that's just as a result of having done all this work around the world, you know. I mean, I feel very privileged. Don't get me wrong, I'm very privileged. That 12 years I had at Commodore were the best 12 years of my life, and I wouldn't change a second of it. Or maybe a couple of the decisions I made weren't good, but generally speaking, it was fantastic. And if Commodore had still been going, I would still be there, because I loved it. It was me through and through, you know.
Of course, yeah. I heard the same from many other people working for Commodore, that it was the best time in their life. So let me ask you a bit about the rumors of the UK market that I heard. For example, one thing you often hear is that data sets and cassettes releases were more liked than diskette releases for the Commodore 64. That actually tapes sold better. Is that true?
Sold better than what?
Than disc releases.
Well, I think initially yes, because but I think that's only as a result of the developers. The games developers didn't really know how to do discs initially, whereas the cassettes they were so used to. It was just a matter of what was available when it came out. But to be honest with you, the whole disc market skipped so quickly. It went from floppy disks to hard drives, and then obviously to CDs and stuff so quickly. So there wasn't a huge market for floppies anyway. It was never very big.
I see.
See, most of the serious people that when they got a 64, they wouldn't use a cassette for very long. You get bored to death waiting for it to load. So they'd buy a 1541 or whatever it was they were going to use, and then but very very quickly the whole thing changed from 64 to Amiga, it was 64 owners who initially bought the Amiga because they liked the 64 and the Amiga promised so much more and delivered so much more. Obviously. I mean, we had a very close relationship in Commodore UK with games developers, and we encouraged it. We used to give them development kits at really cheap prices and everything, unlike I think many of the other subsidiaries. But I don't think that any of them really wrote very much for the 3.5-inch format. They just didn't do it,
Yeah, that's actually true. There are just a couple of games, for example, and even the software like GEOS would come with 5.25-inch discs. So
Yes, yeah.
with hundreds of discs, where you actually could have less disk if you were upgrading to a better, the 3.5-inch. Um, yeah, well. So you made a statement earlier that Commodore was not responsible for software, but in the beginning, 82, 83, they actually had a software department, because I personally have some games from Commodore like Kickman or Clowns or something, or
Yeah.
Soccer, which was one of the most famous Commodore games made by Commodore.
Yeah, well, I think we took the credit for it, but we just paid somebody who was sitting in his bedroom to make, the international soccer it was, wasn't it? That was the
Yeah,
name of it.
International Soccer, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I met the young man. He's a very very nice young man, and I mean, he did pretty well out of it. But I mean, we claimed it as ours, and we marketed it as ours. But of course, he was paid for it. But we made a mess of that too. We had a lot of software that was designed and we put our name to, and then when Commodore UK, we had to close. We had a big purpose-built factory in a place in England called Corby. It's actually not that far from here. It's probably about 45 minutes drive from here. We bought a 10-acre site and built a whole factory on there, and anyway, we closed it down under the, I think it was when Rattigan came in, and he said cut costs. So he just we went from 581 people overnight down to 13. How about that? Anyway, when we were clearing that all out, I had to get rid of loads and loads of stuff. I could sell lots of it, and we had a whole lot of software that was. There's a part of England, an island at the foot of England called the Isle of Wight. I don't know if you've heard of it, but anyway, there was a game written that was about treasure that was buried somewhere around this island, and people got the software, followed the clues, and then they dug up this treasure. All right. Now I found, I don't know, 10,000 copies of it or something in one of the warehouses. Now, the deal that we'd done with the Isle of Wight Tourist Board, they were getting something like £3 or something for every copy that was sold, right? And I needed to get rid of it. So I got in touch with these people and I said, right, the deal that you've had up until now has been £3 a copy, but I've got to get rid of this, and I'm looking to sell it for £1 a copy. So we'll give you 20 pence or 30 pence or something. And they said, no. Absolutely no way. It's £3 or nothing. Okay, well, if that's the case, then we'll just destroy it. I said, you won't do that. What's this space? So I got a big digger, We dug a massive 40-foot hole. We buried all this software, buried it and everything. We had people witnessing it, a judge and a lawyer, and to witness it had been buried and destroyed. Sent them the information that proved that we destroyed it. So is it one good example? Interesting.
That looks a bit. That sounds a bit like the Atari digging with the ET cartridges and so on. What do you know about the Japanese market? Do you know anything about the Japanese market?
We had no business there. And you see, there's a lot of questions that Mehdi Ali could never answer. I mean, I asked him, for example, when I took over at CIL as general manager, I said to him, why aren't we doing any business in India? Right? And he said, I don't want to do business with the Indians, because he's a Pakistani and he hated the Indians. And I said, but that's ridiculous. No, you can't get anybody you can trust and all of that. I said to him, look, Mehdi, I said, I'm going to make it a mission to get a distributor in India. It's a huge market. How are you going to do that? I said, well, what I'll do is I'll put an advertisement in the Times of India looking for distributors, right, and see what happens. You know, that ain't going to work. Well, it did work. I ran about 3 adverts. I said, I'm going to be in India at such and such a date, and I will interview anybody who's interested. So we had loads of inquiries came in, and I ended up appointing somebody who they knew all about the product. They were really, really knowledgeable. And so we ended up getting distribution. The only problem was, in India, when you import anything, the import duty is massively high, and it means that it made it very expensive to a nation that is predominantly very poor. So, in fact, there's another story there, is that we were going to set up an assembly plant in India, because that would make sense, you see. Your import duties would come down probably 60% if you could send in the bits, they assemble it, it's only an assembly operation, and then sell it. And so it was giving work to India and also reducing our costs and everything. So my distributors set up a meeting with the State Bank of India, because obviously they needed some funding to set up this. And I went along to this meeting, it's absolutely true. And there were 2 guys that we met from the State Bank of India, and we did a whole presentation. This is what we make, this is how we do it. We shot a presentation of how the plant would be and all the rest of it. And I said, you know, I said to them, right, what we need from you, we need and funds to be able to make this all happen. And these 2 guys said, one guy said, well, what I want to know, he said, is what's in it for us? And I said, well, as the State Bank of India, he said, no, I'm not talking about the bank. What's in it for us, him and me? And at which,
okay.
Yeah. At
Corruption,
which point,
kind of?
Yeah, at which point, exactly. At which point in time I just walked out. I said, I'm not going to do business with you guys. Forget it. Because this was a normal business transaction with supposed to be the best bank in India. And these 2 guys wanted back pocket, you know, not interested. You have to walk away from that. But that's the kind of thing that happens all the time. You know, there's a lot of corruption everywhere, man. Everywhere.
But if I'm not mistaken, Petro made some business with India, because in the last years he sold Magic Amiga packages. You probably heard of it.
Magic Pack was one of our packs. Yeah.
Yeah. He had a friend in India, a retailer, and he bought back some huge amount of stock from the Amiga Magic package, and sold it within the Amiga community in the last 3 years.
Yeah, I've heard all sorts of things. My problem is this, and again, I said to you, I'll always tell you the truth, right?
Sure.
I have absolutely no regard whatsoever for Petro Tyschtschenko. Yeah, I have absolutely no regard for Petro Tyschtschenko, and he knows it. It's not something behind his back. I've told him what I think of him, and I've told people on camera what I think of him.
Okay.
I don't believe it. I don't believe anything about this stock from India. I don't believe it. I don't know where it came from. I very, very much doubt that it came from India. to be honest with you.
Okay.
Although it's possible that somebody in India bought the stock in after everything else had fallen over, and then he got it from there. That is possible. But what I can tell you is this, is that for some reason, and I can't get my head around why, a lot of the people in the Amiga community, and particularly in Germany, have this feeling that Petro is some kind of god, that he kept the thing going and all that kind of stuff, right? Which is, it could not be further from the truth, to be honest with you. Now, I suspected, and he has subsequently said yes, is owned up to it. I suspected that he had something to do with getting the Chinese to drop out of our bid. And in fact, we now know he did, because he admitted to it. Right?
Okay.
He was working on Eskom's behalf, and he went over to China and said to them, you can have the distribution rights and everything for $1.5 million. Don't pay 25 million. And of course, they dropped them anyway. They didn't take them anyway. But that's what. But I've also got a lot of disregard for him, because in his job, in his role with Commodore, he was incompetent. He was constantly incompetent. Do you know any about this?
It's interesting because I also did an interview with him, also in English, and he said totally opposite. He said the others did the mistakes, and he was trying to correct everything. And now you are saying that he is doing the mistakes, and you were trying to correct.
Put it this way. Put it this way, right? Commodore UK, absolutely without question, was the most successful business in all of the Commodore world. No question. Nobody can argue that. It's absolutely true. Now, let me give you an example. His job was logistics, product logistics. Right? Now, if somebody fucked up, and I did, that time when we sold 186,000 Amigas, I did not forecast that many sales. I did not forecast by a long way how many monitors we were going to sell, right? Under forecast. That's not a bad mistake, to be under forecast, right? But we were well under forecast because of the volume of Batman packs that we sold. Now, we needed monitors desperately. So Petro was told, get some monitors to the UK. Now, let me tell you what he did. He got monitors from Australia, because Australia has got 240 volt, the same as the UK, right? He flew them in planes all the way from Australia. You can imagine what that cost. 12,000 miles by air for monitors which weigh a bloody ton, got them to us, and they're not compatible.
Ooh, okay.
They're not compatible because you've heard of polarity. You know, it's opposite polarity. In Australia, the water goes down the sink one way, and on the other side of the world, it goes down the other. The polarity, if you remember, on the back of the tube, you've got all the copper wiring, and it's got a certain polarity. Does not work, made for Australia and made for the UK. So he had all this expense, a massive amount of expense, got all the product to us, and it's not compatible. We couldn't use it. And too expensive to rewire, and it wouldn't make any sense. So that's just one example, man. One example, and there were loads of them. So he was known, and he knows I've said this, so I'm not talking behind his back. All the general managers of all the subsidiaries, when we all had a meeting, he was always there. He was known by everybody as Mehdi Ali's bag carrier, because he used to.
Yeah, he also said himself that he was very good friends with Mehdi Ali. So. Yeah.
Well, good luck to him, because Mehdi Ali, the decisions Mehdi Ali made, out of every 100 decisions, I'd say 99 of them were wrong. So who'd want to be a friend of somebody like that? But having said that, I think I'm the only person, I could easily be wrong, but I believe I'm the only person. I actually went out with Mehdi and his family and stayed in Mehdi's home one night in America. He invited me to stay overnight. So I think I was held in reasonably high regard, but at the end of the day, look, I just every time people talk about what Petro did, um, he spent a lot of money. I mean, he had a bloody car done with Amiga printed all over it. What did that cost? When the company's struggling, they went bankrupt so quickly because they didn't have any money. They had never intended, ever intended, to support the Amiga. They didn't even have it in their shops, man. Sometimes we went into a shop, say, "Have you got any Amigas?" And there might be one or two hidden under the bench somewhere. They didn't want to sell Amigas. Didn't have anything to do with it. Why did they buy it? I never understand. Why didn't they just pay for the rights for Commodore, CBM, and manufacture PCs under that badge, and then give us the Amiga, sell us the Amiga, and let us do it? But they didn't. They didn't want to know. Crazy.
Yeah, by the community, as I said earlier, by the German community, Petro is seen as a hero for keeping up so long the Amiga flag and trying to rescue Amiga. First with the Ascom deal, then with Gateway 2000, I think it was. Yeah, Gateway 2000, and so and you are saying it's the opposite. So
Well,
you
no, look, I'm saying, all I'm saying is that he had nothing to do with the success of Amiga in any way, shape, or form until after the bankruptcy. He had nothing to do,
okay, okay,
right?
okay.
So all the people like me and all the other people who, you know, Dave Haney, people who developed it and promoted it and worked for it and kept it alive all those years, you know, we did that work, and it's certainly being acknowledged. Don't get me wrong. I mean, these 30th anniversaries are fantastic, and we're all being made to look like heroes, which is lovely. Don't get me wrong, but he had nothing to do with it at all until after, and when it was already in a mess.
Hmm.
You know.
I see, I see, I see. So, so let me go a bit back. I mean, did you actually, well, notice about the change, or did you see the changes in the company when Jack Tramiel was removed and his family were removed from the company? Or were you so
Well,
far away that you even didn't
no.
experience
I
that
mean,
period?
no. The problem is, I joined Commodore in June of 1983. Okay, and what happened was I went to Las Vegas in January of '84. One of my customers had bought tickets and then couldn't go, so he offered me the tickets, his flight and hotel, and I went to my boss then, who was the guy called Howard Stanworth. He was the MD of Commodore UK at that time. And I said, "Look, I've been offered this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to take anything that's unofficial. Are you happy for me to go?" And they said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, while you're there, go on to the Commodore stand, have a look around, see if there's anything new that you can report back to us." Fine. So I went to the CES, which is always around the 5, 6, 7 of January in Las Vegas, and Jack Tramiel was on the stand. I spoke to him maybe 30 seconds. He wouldn't remember in a million years, right?
Yeah.
And it was only shortly after that, maybe 4 or 5 months after that, when he was kicked out by the board because he tried to bring his sons onto the board, and the board said no way. They've got no background. They've got no, you know, and Irving Gould was the main man because he was a majority shareholder. You know, up until the day he died, he had 22% of the shares, and his is an interesting story as well. One day I'll tell you. And so he just said no. And so then that's when that spurred Jack Tramiel got kicked out. So the first thing he did is he'd heard about Amiga, and he went to the Amiga guys and said, "I'll buy it from you." Right? Gave them a check for $50,000 as a deposit. Went off having secured, he thought, their business, and then bought Atari, which he paid $1 for, but he had to pay all the debts off. And his idea was to get the Amiga, launch it as an Atari product, and he'd have something to sell straight away. Quite clever. Unbeknown to him, in the time it took him to sort out the Atari situation, Commodore went to Amiga Corporation and offered him a lot better deal. So we bought it, and it was all signed, sealed, and delivered. And when Jack Tramiel found out, he raced over to them saying, "What are you doing here? you've taken my money. And they said, no, we haven't. And they gave him his check back. They'd never cashed his check. So he wasn't a very happy bunny about that. But that's when, and to give him more credit, he pulled together the Atari ST really quickly, based on sort of the raw technology of Amiga. It was never going to be as good, but it was a bloody good product. And then he started to compete against us. And that was interesting because Bob Beddoes had been in Commodore UK, and he was working with Jack Jamil. And then my original sales manager boss, not the managing director, the sales manager, was a guy called Paul Welsh. And he joined Atari as well. So we were selling, they were our competitors.
Wow.
And that's when I said to you, when we introduced all of these holiday trips, and so that the dealers were selling Amiga instead of ST, that's when we beat them, hands down, beat them every single time. It's good fun.
You know so much, and you know so many details still. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. How did you actually see the Spectrum, the competition? Because the Spectrum ZX is considered the most successful computer in the UK until today.
I don't. Well, I've never ever heard that, because we sold millions of 64s, millions of them.
Okay.
You know, you wouldn't know these stores, but I mean, I got a Commodore 64 into Boots the Chemist here, big chain of chemist stores. Tesco supermarkets, I got 64 in there. British Home Stores, all of these companies that would never have sold anything like it in their life before, I got into every single one of them. We were in bookstores, we were in everything you can imagine. We got our product in there because we were bloody good at what we were doing. We were selling, and it was selling out. We promoted it well, so we sold it in well, and we promoted it so it got drawn out. That's the thing,
It's so sad in a way that despite you tried all to correct that in the USA, that it failed in a way, because you really have very clever ideas on with the packaging and how to sell products and stuff, and convince retailers to sell your stuff instead of others people's stuff. So at the beginning you were mentioning, for example, the Batman the movie game with the Amiga as the packaging. What did you do for the Commodore 64, for example?
Well, we had loads and loads of packs. In fact, if you give me an email address, I will send you some pictures. I've got lots of pictures of the packs that you can probably use. We had loads of them. We had one that was called the Light Fantastic, and that had a light gun in it.
I have it.
Yeah, okay. Well, I
have the light gun. I have the light gun. Yeah.
I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe that we were the first computer ever to have a mouse in the pack. We had I can't think what, I know what it was. It was called, I'll think of the name, but we had I got this product called Neos Mouse and Cheese, and it was actually a painting package that you used a mouse with. It was a Japanese product, and I bought so many of those from this the Japanese representative in London that they made him a director of the company because he sold that many units. As I put that in.
That was the 1351 mouse.
No. This was a 64, the Connoisseur Collection. It was called this package, and no, the mouse was just for the 64, and it drove this. It was the driver for and controller for this art package, and only worked with the art package.
Ah, okay.
But, yeah.
Okay.
did you also know that we put together the first ever PC pack? A proper retail pack with PCs in it. We had the PC 10, 20 and 30. Do you remember those products?
I have a PC 20. It was my first family's computer actually.
Right,
A PC 20-3 we had.
Right, okay. Well, let me tell you what we did. I said to my boss then, it was Steve Franklin, I said, why don't you let us have some of the basic PCs? Because they can be a retail product as well. He said, what do you want to do? And I said, let's put a package together. And this is really, really interesting. You're going to love this, right? We didn't have any budget for it because it wasn't really a consumer product. But I wanted to do it. And he said, well, if you can...
product, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I had no budget to do that with. And I'd used all my marketing budget for my consumer product. But I wanted to do it. And he said, well, if you can do it without getting any budget, you can do it. Now, we wanted to had a package designed to sit the PC in, and on the package itself, part of our idea was to have people that everybody could recognize on the packaging, so that they could realize that this is for everybody's use. So, for example, we had a policeman, we had a professor, we had a nurse, or a doctor, we had a surveyor, and all of these people were pictured on the packaging, right? But because we didn't have any budget, we couldn't afford to pay anybody to come along and do that. So me and all my staff, we all got dressed up and we got photographed, and it's all us on this packaging, right? So funny. Now, what we did was, and again, this is clever, and I'm not saying it to be a big head, but you think about this, it is clever. In those days, nobody even knew how to put a bloody PC together. It was a complete unknown, right? So the first thing we did was on the package. The packaging was exactly the same for all three models, except on the end, on a strip all the way around on the end, we had three different colors. We had turquoise, pink, I don't know what the other one was, yellow, I think, can't remember. And every single peripheral that matched that, the packaging matched it. So there was a yellow, pink, and turquoise. So if you bought the PC and you wanted to go and buy something else for it, if the color matched, you knew it was right for you. That's the first thing. Very clever. But the other thing we did is that we had a VCR video produced, right? And we used a guy who was very, very famous on television.
No, not Jim Butterfield, right?
No. This was somebody who was famous on television.
Okay.
There was a comedy trio called the Goodies.
Okay.
And there's a guy, one of the Goodies guys' name is Tim Brooke Taylor. He was ever so well known. So we paid him. It didn't cost us very much money. Actually, I think we had to give him an Amiga. And he did this video for us, right? And it was him in an office with his secretary. Secretary was a black girl on purpose. Think about it. And it was all about, hey, I've just got this new product. And so to make your life as a secretary easier. Well, how's it going to work? And they show you, they start reading it and how you all put it all together, right? Very clever. Anyway, we sold some. And then about 3 days later, we got a phone call from one of our dealers who was also an IBM dealer. And he rang us up and he said, I just want to let you know, IBM have just come in and bought one of each of your packs because they want to see what you're doing. And that was, I don't know when that was, you know. But I mean, in the early days of the PC 10, 20 and 30.
87.
That'd be about right.
Yeah. Because when I switch it on, it always says copyright 87, 88, 89. So it must be 87, I think.
Yeah, that'd be right. That'd be about right, yeah. But that's interesting, you know, but we were always ahead of the game. You know, another example, one time, I can't remember what the launch was. We launched something, I can't remember what it was. But we had a guy came to our launch. He was the star, and his name's Jonathan Ross. He's a massive star on television here now. I mean, he has his own show every week. He's paid millions, right? We had him as our presenter. Now, when I launched the CD32, which we did in the Science Museum in London. We rented part of the Science Museum to do the launch, and I had a guy there who was our presenter, and this is a guy who is now Evans. His name is Chris Evans. He is now going to be the new presenter of Top Gear. You know, the most watched program in the world. He is now going to be the new presenter for Top Gear, and we had him launch the CD32. We're always switched on about who's going to likely to be, you know, somebody important. And I got photographs of that as well with him and I'm holding a CD32 and he's there, and all these sorts of things. You know, I mean, we were into the business thoroughly. We really, really were. We understood the market. We understood our market very well. And it was a shame. I mean, another thing, I went to Mehdi Ali one day and I said, Mehdi, do you realize how much money you are wasting and how much money you could save with all the advertising that's going on? And he said, what do you mean? I said, Mehdi, we get 5% of our turnover, and most companies get that sort of figure to spend. So we were £100 million a year company. So we got £5 million to promote our business. France would have got maybe 1.5 million. Germany, 4 million or whatever, right? Italy, so much. And I said, you give them all that money, and they all do their own thing, and they all do it different from everybody else, and it costs a fortune and wastes a fortune. He said, well, what are you talking about? I said, look, Mehdi, let me give you an example. I said, 2 weeks ago, I was going on holiday. I used to, I don't know, but I used to own an apartment in Spain, down near Marbella. And I said, I went to Heathrow Airport to get my flight, and there's a massive big poster site, and it's Sony and a message. Now, I got on my plane, I landed in Malaga. There's the same sign, exactly the same message in Spanish. So they have this worldwide, global message. Wherever you go, it's the same message. That ain't rocket science. That's common sense. We did, everything we did was done differently. So I said to Mehdi, right, if I produce a TV commercial, why don't you let me produce it and get it dubbed in all the different languages? It only cost 100 grand each more, instead of spending 2 million on an advert in every country. Just get them, and everybody has the same advert but in their own language. When we get our brochures done, we'll do a deal with somebody, and they will produce the brochures for us in each language. So it'll be English and maybe French or whatever, and ship out it's all printed at once. It'd be a lot cheaper. And anyway, about 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later, he rang me up and he said, Pleasance, he said, I've listened to you again. What do you mean? He said, I've just appointed a director of international marketing, and he's got 2 guys working for him. One of them is a business product specialist, and the other one's a consumer specialist. Okay, fine. Good step forward. Now, the guy, I think his name is Peter somebody, but I can't remember. I think it was Peter. The first thing they do, they hire their own central London offices. We were out of London, but close proximity. We had office space. He could have come and worked from there, which he should have done, right? But rented their own offices. Cost a fortune. The first thing he did was he ordered and had made a suite of office furniture that cost £140,000. That's what he had ordered and put in his office.
Ooh,
right?
Okay.
The next thing you know, the consumer specialist rang me up and he said, David, he said, I understand you're the consumer guy. And I said, yeah, I think so. He said, I need to come and see you. I said, great, happy. As God is my witness, he came and he spent 14 minutes with me. 14 minutes. And said, I've got all the information I need, and went.
Ooh.
I never saw him again. Never saw him again. Now, this is another example of Mehdi recruiting people. He had no idea what they did or how good they were, if they were any good at all. And that office suite of furniture, when Commodore UK liquefied, finally, I think I sold that for about £400, that whole suite of furniture.
Wow.
Because that's really all it was worth.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, it's really incredible. Well, all I know from the American marketing advertising thing is that my first interview with Commodore's people was actually Michael Tomczak, marketing manager of USA, and he told me that story, that the most remarkable story he had was making promotion with William Shatner, who never saw
Right.
a real computer until then. So that is what he told me, and Dave Haney and Bill Hurt told me that a big problem, to come back to your statement, why the Amiga didn't sell well is that Commodore really didn't do much promotion in magazines and so on. Dave Haney and Bill Hurt, they told me they never actually saw any advertisement in any magazine for
Yeah,
the
but that's
Amiga.
in America. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. But you see, America never developed a following, which is so important. You have to do that. We gave the brand this incredible. I don't know what the word is really. People just adored the brand, and that's
The
why.
passion, maybe.
Yeah, but it's more than that. I mean, they became loyal, and you can tell these Amiga 30 events, they've astounded everybody, including me. The number of people, and how successful it's all been. It's unbelievable. It's 30 years. Well, 21 years since the company went bankrupt. 21 years, and look at the loyalty. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really true. It's really true. Yeah, yeah. And so what do you think about people that actually try to jump on the brand? You probably heard the Commodore PET phone that has been coming out from those two
Yeah,
Italian guys.
yeah, I know a reasonable amount about it, but as I understand it now, they're up to their knees in lawsuit because they don't have the rights for it. And anyway, I mean, you've never asked me what our plans were. If we had been successful in that management buyout, you never asked us what we were going to do. Do you want to know?
Sure, sure. I'm by far not done with my questions. So sure. Tell me.
Right. Let me tell you what we intended to do.
To
Not
save the
necessarily.
company, or
This is
what
this
part?
is this is Colin Proudfoot and I, with the investors that we had as a consortium. If we'd have been successful, this is what we would have done with Commodore. Okay?
So what if? Okay.
Yeah. What if? Yeah. The first thing, and we produced a business plan which has this all in, right? The first thing that we were going to do was we were going to get funds coming in to the company, which cost very, very little to get. And let me explain. The first thing we would have done is, let's take, for example, the first name that comes to mind, CBM. CBM is as powerful as IBM in terms of its name. So what we would have done with CBM is that we would have licensed that name to anybody making PCs or business products of any kind, printers or drives or anything at all. We would have licensed the CB brand, and we would have established a small quality control team to make sure that what they produced was up to standard and therefore did not jeopardize our name, right? And we would have been getting royalty coming in for anything that they made and sold under our name. Now also, we would have said to whoever was doing it, would say, right, if you would like our own sales team to also sell this product into our distribution channels, we will do so for a commission. So immediately you've got CBM branded PCs, monitors, drives, whatever, and we're selling them, but we're not making them, we're not paying the cost, we're not storing them, we are just ordering and shipping out to fulfill orders. But getting royalties coming in, and of course royalties would be on every product sold all over the world. And we'd also be getting commission for anything that we physically sold. So that's CBM. Let's take Commodore. Commodore has distribution in Europe in every retail electronic shop in the countries, everyone. So we would have licensed the Commodore name to anybody who made anything with a plug on it, toasters, kettles, it didn't matter. Televisions, hi-fis, it didn't matter. If they wanted this Commodore name, they would pay us a royalty to use the name. Again, our quality control people would make sure that stuff was going out, was up to standard, right? But it cost so little to have a quality control team, right? And then we'd do the same thing. They would pay us a royalty, and if they wanted us to sell their product with our name on it, we'd sell it too, which would be easy because we already had the distribution channels. So there's two forms of revenue coming in without any major expense on ours. Let's take the Amiga name. Now, Amiga, we were always asked for things like clothing, T-shirts, caps, tracksuits, anything with the merchandise, anything at all with the Amiga. We were done exactly the same. License the name, and you can manufacture it. We'll make sure the quality is okay, and we get a royalty, and if you want us to sell it, we will do so. So there's three different forms of revenue coming in without much expense. Now, in terms of the then current Amiga line, we've really got 1200s and CD32s. The rest were more or less history. Although the 500 was still around. We had designed by a German company called Microtech, I think they were called. We had designed a tower case that was designed that would be able to fit a 500 PCB or a 1200 PCB, and every PCB we developed from then on would have been designed to fit in this tower case. And the idea was that if you started off with a 500 and you wanted to expand it, you take your existing small 500 to your local dealer, not the Dixons and people like that, but your small dealers who know what they're doing, and he would take out your PCB, he would put it in one of these tower cases, put it in, add your bits, and as you wanted to, you could grow it, you could add bits to it. That range was going to be called Amiga Infinity. That was what we designed. And the idea was, as long as we could keep the current Amiga range going, however long that may be, there would be a path for upgrade, because we were always being accused of dropping people, bringing out something new that wasn't compatible and all the rest of it.
That's actually true, yeah.
Yeah, of course, and very true, and so this was going to address that, so that you could buy in confidence knowing you can upgrade and upgrade and upgrade. And you must admit that's a very good idea. Okay. Now,
well, that upgrading and exchanging is what you do nowadays with PCs.
Exactly, but this is our idea, and we had the case designed. It's all there in evidence, right? This was way back, right? Anyway, as far as the Amiga range was concerned, eventually we would have to drop the range because technology was leapfrogging, and what was being developed in the US by the Dave Haney and guys like that was incredible. I don't know. I think that some people refer to it as Ombre. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, you told me. Yeah.
It's a RISC-based core into which they put a 3D rendering engine. They put 5.1 stereo surround sound, which was the top of the range at that time. They had whatever they call this chunky planer, which moves big chunks of data around. I mean, it was phenomenal. And they were only kind of cobbling it together to show us what it would do. And it was just mind-blowing. So we would use all of the revenue coming in from all the sources I've just told you about, would have been put to developing new product. Oh, and there's something else I forgot. CD32, this is big, right? What I wanted to do with CD32 is I wanted to sell it as an OEM product to every single hi-fi manufacturer. Toshiba, Hitachi, Pioneer, you name it, right? Say, right, instead of putting a CD player in, or put in a CD32, right? You might have to change the design so it's a drawer front or whatever. But then, so you've got this in your stack system, which you can charge more for. That means we sell a lot more CD32s because they've been buying them as an OEM product, but more than that, it would mean that we would end up for the first time ever with a home computer in the lounge room of people's homes. Wow. Which is what everybody's been trying to do. So what do you think of that? What do you think of that as a business?
That's pretty clever. But I guess you didn't have the funds to make all that happen, right?
No, but if we'd have won the buyout, if the Chinese hadn't been, if Petro Tyschtschenko hadn't cheated us,
uh,
and you ask him about it,
uh,
because he's admitted it, right? I swear to you, he's admitted it, right? We'd have had the business, and that's what would have been happening right now. Would have been everything I've told you about would have been what's happening, and it would be a different company altogether. I can assure you. All of those engineers, we would have kept every one of them. The first thing that they did when they bought the business, Escom, they got rid of everybody and the technology. Duh.
Yeah, I know. But it's interesting that you mentioned that because the first thing that happened when I was entering at Noise was Dave Haney seeing me and remembering me that I did an interview with him. And he was approaching me and he said, you know what would be great? If we could make a Kickstarter fundraising and develop new Amigas. I would totally do that, he said. He would totally develop new Amigas if he could find people to sell it for him. He would totally do that. And getting the funds out of the community
Yeah,
via Kickstarter.
you'd need Kickstarter's not big enough. You need venture capitalists for that, and there probably are people that would do it. But the trouble is, I think it's too late now. You know, I think the technology is gone, and the opportunity is gone. You know, even though there's a massive amount of terrific Amiga supporters out there, I don't think you could raise enough money to do it. I really don't, because you're starting completely from scratch. You know, you haven't even got that technology to progress with. It's gone. You know.
So you think that the retro hype is not good enough for restarting the Commodore Amiga business?
No.
So
I've been approached several times over the last few years to would I be involved in any kind of thing, and to be honest with you, it doesn't turn me on.
okay.
You know, I'm somebody when I believe in something, I can sell it as good as anybody in the world, but I have to believe in it, you know. And to be honest with you, I think it's a shame. It's history, you know.
Okay.
Great times, fabulous history. And in the 12 years I was with Commodore, I'd hardly change anything, to be honest with you. It was fabulous. But I think, you know, there is, I'm not going to tell you, I can't tell you what it is, but I am involved in something, just getting involved in something, which I can't tell you just yet.
Sure, sure.
In another 2 or 3 weeks, I should be able to tell you in something. And it has sort of come from the Amiga family, if you like. And this is something that I'm extremely excited about. But I'll tell you later. I can't tell you now, I promise.
No problem. No
I don't have a problem. As I said to you, everything I've told you is the truth.
Yeah.
And so if I've said, look, for example, things I've said about Petro. I mean, he approached me in Germany, and he said, "Oh, I've heard you said this, and I've heard you said that, and it wasn't me who was responsible for those monitors." And I said, "Petro, you were in charge. You know, that was your responsibility." He said, "Oh, somebody else did." I said, "Even if somebody else did it, although I doubt it, because that was your responsibility, the buck stops with you." And I said, "Petro, if there's anything I've said on video or to anybody else, then you can disprove. I will immediately, you know, contradict and say I was wrong. And I'll do that on any media at all. But I know you can't, because everything I've said is absolutely true." So he backed off then, you know. So, you know, what I'm saying is, for me, it's very easy. I remember everything because I haven't lied, and my memory's not good enough to be a liar, you know. So I'll just remember everything as it was, you know.
Yeah, it's just interesting because you know so many stuff that so many other Commodorians couldn't answer me or wouldn't want to answer me. I don't know what of the two is the matter actually, but I had a lot of open questions that you now answered, and now I get a broader picture, and I don't even remember. I think you weren't part of the first Brian Becknell's book, were you?
No.
You
No.
weren't.
Not me.
And
But I'm in his new one.
yeah, that's what I wanted to say. It's like you appeared recently, suddenly, and before 2015, nobody have heard of you, kind of. Or is that just my feeling? I don't know.
No, I mean, I kind of feel like that too. Except the difference is, you see, I was very well known in the UK, and one of the reasons for that is that when I took over, well, actually as sales and marketing director before I was MD, one of the things I did was I wanted to put a face to Commodore for the simple reason that the people were making all these comments about Commodore did this badly and they did that badly and why did they do this and all the rest of it. And I thought, well, I'm not afraid to answer the questions. You can ask me anything. So I ended up having three columns in three different magazines, and people would write in questions, and then the following month I'd answer them. So I put a face to the company, if you like, and so I got kind of known for that, and you obviously heard the story about when we launched the CD32.
Yeah.
You heard about how 2 weeks before the launch, the interview that was held in a PC magazine was held with Tom Kalinske, who was then the worldwide president of Sega. Did you know about that?
No, I don't know about the Sega thing.
Well, what happened was that Tom Kalinske was interviewed by a PC journalist, and the journalist said to him, "Okay, then, you've got all these products. What about 32-bit technology?" And Tom Kalinske said, and I more or less quote, 32-bit technology, that's a long, long way away. He said, if anybody could do it, it would be Sega. But we're not doing it. It's a long way away. And 2 weeks later, we launched the CD32, right? Now, the thing is this, is that, first of all, we weren't planning to launch the CD32. That was going to be the following year. And the reason was that we'd got machines out with many developers developing new 32-bit games, and we were going to launch when we got all these games were ready, brand new upmarket games. But because Commodore International got into trouble, they decided to launch it early, hoping to get extra sales, to get some extra cash coming through. So we were facing this position where we had to launch a machine that we had no really great software for. It was all coming, was all in place, and everybody was sworn to secrecy and kept the secret. I'll be honest with that. They were brilliant. But we had games being developed by all the good games manufacturers. They were all under development. Anyway, just getting back to the Sega story, I don't know if you know Sega's advertising for a long time. It used to be, they used to write, to be this good takes ages. And then to be this good, and they spun the word ages around, what's about, take Sega, right? Clever, very clever advertising. So when Tom Kalinske said that they couldn't do this, it was a long way away, I put out advertising which said, to be this good will take Sega ages. Because they'd said so, right? Now, the best thing about that was that I got a phone call from a guy, and he said to me, David, he said, I'm sure you don't remember me, he said, but we've done business before, he said, I've got some of these large poster sites all over the country. He said, now, the reason I'm calling you, he said, is that I've got 3 central London poster sites that somebody had paid the 50% deposit on and have now just pulled out. They're not going to go ahead with it. So he said, if you want those 3 sites, you can have them for half price because I've already got half the money. And he said, but the best thing of all is that one of them is right outside Sega's head office.
Wow. Wow.
So I put a 96-sheet poster site up right outside Sega that said, to be this good will take Sega ages.
Smart.
Oh, that was fun. That was so fun, that one, I can tell you.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned Sega, because Sega had also some kind of the same issue with other countries, for example Brazil, where they actually license the stuff to Tectoy. So yeah, so it's basically what you said you would have done too with the Shinies. Actually, they did in Brazil.
Yeah, I think I'm the only person who has had all these different positions. You see, so that does, in that regard, it makes me a unique person, and I can give that perspective on it, which is really good. You know, it's as I said, it consumed me. It was my passion, not just my career. It was my passion. Loved every second of it. It was fabulous. You know.
But interestingly, is you started the interview saying you don't know so much about the technical detail. You are not a tech guy, but then you tell me all the details, what Dave Haney did, and all the Amiga features and so on. So you know a lot.
Well, yeah, yeah, but I mean, I'm having trouble getting this bloody laptop of mine to function properly. So you can. That's what I'm saying. You know, you just need to know enough. You know,
To
I
not
don't need
sound
to.
dumb, but not
Yeah,
being super geeky.
yeah. I mean, I don't know how it does it. I just know you want to do that. This can do it. I don't know how it does it. Don't ask me to tell you how it does it, but I know it does it. You know.
So
I
do
get
you?
away with a lot that way. You know.
Okay.
Yeah, but see, in that instance, remember, we went over there to do due diligence. What are we actually going to be buying if we bid for the company? What are we going to be buying? And I said to the engineer guys, Dave Haney being one of them, what is it? What you got under development, so we can have a look at. And then, and to be honest with you, I think Dave didn't even really know me, even though I'd been in the States, you know, a couple of years before. He knew of me, but didn't really know me. But I think I convinced him when we were in that short time that we spoke that if we got the company, his job would be safe and it would be even better. You know, we'd taken it further, and I think he was disappointed when it all went pear shaped. You know, he didn't understand why. I mean, we didn't tell anybody for a long time why. We just because we were kind of hurt, I suppose. You know, we got everything in place. You imagine we raised $50 million, man. You know, but we raised it because our business plan was a good business plan. You know, but hey, this life. You know, sometimes it deals with cards that you got to play whether you like them or not. You know.
Also, I wanted to refer to a statement you said that when you started with selling the computers for Commodore, nobody knew what a computer was and how a computer works and what to do with it. And I remember I was doing the interview with Chuck Peddle. You probably know
Right.
who he
Yeah,
is. And
I
he
met
told
Chuck.
me
Yeah.
he told me the big problem was when he came up with the PET machine and all that, that people were accusing him of stealing jobs of teachers. Because you wouldn't need teachers anymore because now computers will teach kids, you know? So people were actually afraid that the computer will take away jobs.
Which it has.
But on the other hand, it also gives jobs.
Oh yeah, absolutely, totally agree with you. Yeah, but in certain instances, it definitely has taken jobs away, particularly on things like production lines. You know.
On the other hand, not teachers. They are still
No,
around. They're still
no.
around. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's totally interesting. So, do you feel like a pioneer or like somebody important being so deeply involved in the development with technology?
No, not really. I can. There's one word that conjures up how I feel about what's happened, and that's fortunate. I was in the right place at the right time when the job was available. I was in the right place at the right time when the national account manager position came available, and I ran with it picked it up with both hands and ran with it, you know. And I've always been, I am a very creative person. I come up with ideas all the time, and not all of them work, but a lot of them do. And I've been fortunate that I was given the opportunity to put those ideas into practice. So yeah, I'm fortunate. That's exactly the way. I'm fortunate because the company, in spite of Mehdi Ali and all the idiots, the company was just phenomenal.
You are very, very outspoken, very direct in your words. That's really something very special.
I don't know any other way, you know?
You know, anybody else I've talked to before, they would try to be political, you know. Like Yesh Terakura from Commodore Japan, who was also one of the main engineers of the Commodore 64, he would try to say political. Like, not everything that Michael Tomczak told me was the truth, but he was always good in selling his ideas, you know. So being more political, but you are
Yes.
like they are idiots and stuff. So that's really something interesting. And you don't have any fear that others would be angry on you.
No, the only person I've said anything bad about is Petro Tyschtschenko, really. I mean, Mehdi Ali is an idiot, but he knows what I think about him for that.
Okay.
But no, but I mean, and Petro and I have spoken about it, you know.
Mm.
As I said, I'm not afraid. Everything I say, I would say to people's face.
Mm.
I'm not somebody who will just has a hidden agenda and talk behind your back.
Okay.
If I believe something, I'll say it. And if somebody can disprove it, please do, and then I'll retract immediately. You know, I don't have any problem with that at all. You know, I tell it like it is, and you know, my reputation over 40 years in sales and marketing and business is I have integrity. I value my integrity. That's something you cannot buy. Cannot buy it for any amount of money. You earn integrity by being honest, by people seeing who you are, realizing and accepting who you are, and trusting it. And when they trust it, the people put their trust in me, I never let them down. You know, one of my philosophies is, you know, sometimes you can tell somebody something with absolutely all honesty, and then you say this, and this, and therefore that. And then sometimes things change, and that what you said has changed. Not your fault, but it's changed. Now, a lot of people just ignore that. What I do is I'll get in touch in front of that person and say, oh, I need to talk to you.
Okay.
You know when we were together and I said this, and this, and therefore that. Yes. Well, now this has happened, right? Out of my control, but it changes everything. How do we work together to fix it?
Well, what I have noticed a bit is that Petro seemed to be a bit disappointed that he is somehow not recognized enough by some Commodore people for his achievements. I know that as you are on Facebook too, I don't have to tell you how Facebook works, but I think there was a 30th anniversary event in the Netherlands, and he spoke.
I was there.
You were there, yes.
Yeah.
And he spoke on Facebook on his page, and they were friends with he was friends with the organizer. How badly organized that event was, and Dave Haney and RJ Michael and so on wouldn't even talk to him. He wrote he felt like being an outsider.
I've seen all of that.
You have actually read it, okay?
Oh yeah, it's one of the longest posts in Facebook history.
Exactly, it was.
But let me tell you that I'll tell you the other side of that story. All right.
Sure.
Petra and I have had our disagreements for quite a while. Okay, and I've never been afraid of saying it, and he knows that because as you know, I'm completely forthright. But anyway, let me tell you exactly what happened. As soon as I arrived at the Amsterdam exhibition,
Exactly, Amsterdam was it? Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, just to go back, the night before, on the Friday night, I was in the hotel, and Dave Haney was there, and Dave and I, we ended up being the last two, and we were drinking till about 4:30 in the morning. Okay. Now, I was supposed to be up for 8 o'clock, I think it was. Which I was. I was up and suited and everything else. Dave didn't get up, so they had to take some people to the show. And I said, look, if you want, I'm happy. I'll come with you, or if you want me, I'll stay. And then in another half an hour, I'll go and knock on his door and get him up. So I was late getting there, but because by choice, right? So Dave Haney and I arrived at the show in Amsterdam. Now, you weren't there, were you? No.
No, I wasn't. I just
right.
read that huge
Right.
post on Facebook. Yeah.
Right. There was a main building where the event was held, and then just outside on the grassed area there was a big marquee, and they had lots of exhibitions in the marquee. And Petro was in the marquee. He had his walker and all that shit. Anyway, the first thing I did is I got off out of the car, and I went over and I walked over to Petro, shook his hands, gave him a hug. We had a bit of a chat, right? And then we had a bit of a disagreement because one of the things that I really have taken exception to and you again you wouldn't know this, but you can take it as absolutely the truth, was that Petro said to me, he said, you know, I've been sued. I'm being sued. I was sued, and he was actually sued by the Dutch liquidator, right? Who was his job was to get as much money for the Dutch company as he could, and he was sued on the grounds of gross incompetency. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Right. Now, I never said anything to anybody about this. I know, but I'm not said anything about it. One of the first things Petro said to me was, oh, he said, you know, I've been through such a terrible time. I've been sued. I think it was something like $147 million or something he was sued for, right? And I said, well, you know, no, it wasn't 147. It was like 1.4 million or something like that. Anyway, and I said to him, well, you're a lucky boy, aren't you? And he said, what do you mean? I said, because you didn't have to pay any of your legal fees, did you? And he said, no. He said, thankfully, he said, I was covered. Medi covered me for that. I said, yeah. Why do you think I'm pissed off, Petro? I said, Medi Ali, Irving Gould, and all of the people that were involved in the board, they spent $5 million taking out an insurance policy against being sued, the officers and directors of the company being sued for this bankruptcy, and that is what has paid your lawyer's fees. And I said, but that $5 million belonged to me and every other creditor. They spent $5 million of the money that wasn't theirs to spend, and that pisses me off. Now there's, you know, see, there's another insight, you know. So what can you say, you know? I mean, that $5 million was owed to everybody.
But that doesn't explain why this huge Facebook post. Not yet so far.
Oh no, okay, well no. But the point is that what he complained about was that he didn't think he was treated properly. What happened was that he was actually paid a fee to speak.
Oh,
right?
Okay, a speaker's
right?
fee, okay.
Right? He was paid a fee. Now, when they asked me would I go along, I said, I'll come along with pleasure, and I'll talk with pleasure. But you've got to pay my expenses, just my airfare and my hotel. That's, you know, it shouldn't cost me money. But I didn't want to make any money out of it. But he charged them a fee. Now, the first thing that happened is that they said to him, you've got 30 minutes, I think it was. And he said, no, if I can't talk for an hour, I'm not getting up. So even though they'd already paid him, they paid him in advance. Okay. He then complained.
He said he wanted to talk at least for an hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they said, we've got too many people speaking, that's too long, right? And so he got humpy. He was angry because he couldn't have his hour, right? And then Dave Haney arrived, because he arrived with me in the same car. And of course, he was in the main building and ended up speaking, I think, fairly quickly. But see, Haney and RJ, they never met Petro. It was nothing to do with them. The only reason I met them is because I was in America for a year, 11 months, in 1992, I told you, and B, because I went out to see them when we were doing our due diligence to buy the business. They don't know him. They wouldn't know him if they fell over him. They didn't know who he was. So why would they go up and say hello to him? They didn't even know who he was. And he wasn't even in the same place. He was in this tent outside. But you see, I went out of my way to go and say hello to him, even though I've got the biggest grievance with him of anybody. But I still went and said hello to him. Why wouldn't you? You know, he's still a human being, you know.
So they even don't know him. They
No.
even didn't know him. I see.
No.
But I saw...
He was not important. In Commodore, when Commodore was Commodore, he was not important. General managers knew him because he was always with Mehdi Ali. He was Mehdi Ali's bag carrier.
I see. Yeah, in his book, which is unfortunately only in German yet, but he told the people that he plans to release an English version sometime, hopefully next year. He always said that there was this time of him and Mehdi Ali, getting all managers, general managers of all the companies, meeting and reporting to him how much they sold, how much they profit they made.
No.
No?
What he did, when he was with Medi, we gave our forecasts.
Yeah,
So he
forecast,
could,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but that's not selling. That's what we believe we can
Ah,
sell.
okay.
So therefore, that's it. That was his job, logistics, to make sure if I say I'm going to sell 100,000 Amiga 500s
Mm.
in this quarter, I need 100,000 Amiga 500s. But what you do is you space them out. You know, the only time you don't space them out, so you're not holding inventory, is at Christmas time. You want them early at Christmas, so you get them in all the stores stocked up. But otherwise, so that was his role. It was logistics. It was moving stuff from one place to another to make sure we all had what we needed. And yes, if we under forecast, and I don't think that's a bad fault to under forecast. You know, if you do better than you forecast, you're a hero,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If you over forecast and you fail, you're a villain. But if you under forecast and you exceed your forecast, you're a hero. Well done. And you then pick up the slack from the people who've over forecast. You take their product and sell, and the corporation still gets its revenue. You know.
It's
Now,
interesting.
in terms of his book, you know, I don't know anything about it. Absolutely nothing about it at all.
Because you don't know German, I
Yeah,
suppose.
well, I wouldn't have read it anyway, to be honest with you, because I don't think he's qualified. Like, to be honest with you, Brian Bagnall, not really qualified. He's in a better position now because he's actually. I mean, how can you put a book out like he did that doesn't even mention the European market? Hello, all the market was Europe, it wasn't anywhere else. Now he's righted that now with his new book, and I had a long interview with him. I'm also involved in the new the Amiga Years video, which is being done by the guy that did From Bedrooms to Billionaires.
Yes, I kickstarted both, so
Yeah.
I'm getting both. Yeah.
Well, what I can tell you is this, absolutely, and you can ask him. Alistair, his name is, isn't it? Alistair, the guy is it Alistair, who's doing the video. Him and his wife.
I he's called Cofield as
Yeah,
his last
yeah,
name, but
yeah.
I don't know his first name.
I think it's Alistair. It's certainly Caulfield.
I don't know I don't know.
No,
Let's.
maybe not Alistair. No. But anyway, he said to me, the interesting thing, the irony of, was that where he videoed and did my interview and several other people's was in Sony Computer Entertainment's head office in central London, and I'm sitting in there all these years later. But he said to me, him and his wife said to me that I had given them the best interview they'd ever had, and everything they'd interviewed, because I do this. I'm up front and completely, open about things, and they loved it, absolutely loved it.
Yes. So you are saying basically that Brian Bagnall isn't wasn't really qualified to release the book, but I
And
guess you read the book.
yeah, what I'm saying is that he's written that from from a perspective of the smallest market that Commodore had.
The American market.
Yes, yeah,
Uh,
it's the smallest market they had by a long way. And when you look at the figures that UK did, that Germany did, we did big numbers, big numbers. So I don't know why you would release something that was only a very small fraction of the truth. I'm not saying it wasn't true. I'm not saying that at all. It's just that that's only that view instead of being a bigger view, Because if you took a Commodore's success as only being in America, then it would have been a disaster from day one.
yes,
I mean,
and
it was already, but we kept it alive because we were inventive and we sold lots of product and yeah, I'm sure we could have done things differently. I'm sure we could have done things better, but we gave it a bloody good shot and we were successful. As whatever success is, financially we were very successful. That I can absolutely guarantee, and we can prove it. The thing was this, is that Mehdi used to play a game. He used to say to us, well, the Germans are always outselling you. And to the Germans, he used to say, the Brits are always outselling you, to try and get us to do more, which is, really ridiculous. But when we got all the figures, when Colin and I got all the figures, so we could make a bid for the company, and we'd been outselling the Germans for a long time. A long time. And again, I'm not saying anything disrespectful. It's just the truth. You know, the truth should always come out, you know?
But isn't it the case that thanks to the book from Brian Bracknell, the On the Edge, The Rise and Fall of Commodore, that some kind of history got corrected? Because before we all learned that Apple made the first home computers and made computers a success to everybody, and not Commodore. At least that was my feeling when I read the book 10 years ago. That thanks to this book, some history got corrected now.
Yeah, well, it's recorded. Yeah, you're right. I'm not arguing that, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the book.
Yeah.
I'm just simply saying that, you know, really, it's only a tiny perspective of the whole thing. And now I think that's at last that's being rectified. You know, the whole thing is being looked at in more close detail.
In the new book.
Let's be honest about it.
Yeah.
You know, the information I've given you and other people in Europe have given you, it's a lot more juicy, isn't it? It's a lot more real when you see what happens on a day-to-day basis, and that's exactly what did happen. You know. And another thing, I know that Petro blamed the UK for the 600 fiasco. He blamed the UK for that, and it could not be further from the truth. Absolutely, we wanted the 300, and I'm telling you, all the first several thousand Amiga 600s that arrived, they'd all got A300 printed on the motherboard. Anyway, nice talking with you, mate. Stay in touch, and
sure.
I'll wait to hear from you again.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye now.